It happens to many of us. The dreaded moment when your child is playing a little bit too rough and loses an adult tooth. It has many parents panicking and wondering if the tooth can actually be saved. So tell me, Dr. Bobby, how soon should the child see a dentist after losing an adult tooth?
Well, I think the obvious answer is pretty soon.
Pretty soon, yeah.
as quick as possible.
What are you supposed to do straight away?
Well, if you actually lose a full adult tooth, I mean, there's a lot of things as a responsible adult, you need to think of. You think, how did the accident happen? Did my child get knocked out?
Yes.
Unconscious? If your child's knocked out unconscious, even for a short period of time, forget the tooth. You've got to get to the doctor very, very quickly. You have to think about these things. But if it is a simple case of a tooth gets knocked out and the tooth is on the floor and your child is okay, then the first thing you think about is, how do we keep this tooth? Okay, and if you're lucky enough to have some sterile saline, which lots of people have in their first aid kits at home, you can certainly put it in there, and that would be ideal.
Okay.
But if failing that, then put it in a glass of milk.
Okay.
And that should keep the tooth kind of okay until you get to a dentist very quickly. No, I wouldn't recommend trying to stick a tooth back in without some knowledge of how to do it. For a kickoff, it'd be very painful.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing you should do is make sure that you've located the tooth, make sure your child's okay. Put the tooth into something like sterile saline or milk, and then get to the dentist. Quick, smart.
Okay.
If the dentist isn't open, get down to accident emergency department as quick as possible. Most dentists have an on-call system so that you can ring them up in the middle of the night if it really is an emergency, and any dentist would come out and see a child for a problem like that.
You'd service children like that as well?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So can it be reimplanted then?
If the full tooth has been lost and the socket seems reasonable, then it can be reimplanted, and certainly that would be the first course of action for an adult tooth. But you have to remember, if it's a baby tooth, it's completely the other way around. You never try to reimplant a baby tooth.
That one's for the tooth fairy, right?
That one's for the tooth fairy.
Can't have it. You can't put it back in. So what can happen if the tooth is not reimplanted or otherwise replaced?
Okay, so if the tooth is reimplanted too late, for example, then usually the tooth ends up dying and turning dark and turning brown. If the tooth isn't put in at all, then of course you're left with a space. No one ever knocks out a back tooth. It's always a front tooth. So you're left with a pretty difficult situation on what to do about that front tooth. So the poor little child will be dealing with that issue for the rest of their life in some shape or form.
So what usually happens then? What can happen?
Yeah. So usually what would end up happening is the child would see a dentist. If the tooth is gone forever, then there's a number of options to replace the tooth that's missing. They all involve prosthetic teeth, false teeth.
Okay.
Sometimes it might be a little plastic denture, and that would keep them going usually until they're a bit older, when they can have a permanent implanted tooth into the jawbone. So it's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah,
pretty serious stuff. But luckily it's not that common to have an entire tooth knocked out.
No.
Usually what happens is you'll break a tooth.
Yeah.
You snap a tooth, chip a tooth, something like that.
Yeah, I chipped a tooth once. I've got one chip from.
Trouble.
Yeah. Back in the seat of a car, not wearing the seatbelt. That sort of thing as a kid.
Yeah, that's nasty.
So if your child loses an adult tooth, waste no time and consult a professional immediately, just like Dr. Bobby. Otherwise, if it's not treated properly, it can cause problems for their teeth in the future. So if you've got any concerns about whether a lost adult tooth will affect the straightening of your child's teeth, get into contact with the team at Sunbird Orthodontics today.